Hey, what's up everyone and welcome to Daily Code Buffer. I know I'm late with the topic, but here are the details that we are going to go through over the Spring Boot 3.0. We are going to see what are the new features in the Spring Boot 3.0 and what are the changes that we can do and what are the new classes that we can utilize to improve our coding and make sure that we are using the full potential of Spring Boot 3.0. So without any further ado, let's understand what are the new features in Spring Boot 3.0 and how we can use it. So here you can see that I have added all the major points added in Spring Boot 3.0 and there are many more features as well, but these are the highlights. So we are just going to go through these topics in this particular video. But if you want to know more about the other topics, then do let me know in the comment section below and I will try to make a video on that. And also make sure that you subscribe to my channel so that you don't miss any of those videos as well. So let's start with all the important features. The first one is Java 17 support. So out of the box, Spring Boot 3 is going to support Java 17 and that's going to be the base version of it. So we are going to leverage all the Java 17 functionalities like records and everything. So we are going to see how we are going to use the records as well in this particular video. If you're not sure about the record, then I have created a dedicated video on how to use record in Java. So you can check that out. I will add the link in the description below for that video. The next thing is the Jakarta. So till now Java EE, right? Java Enterprise Edition. So with which we were able to create the web application. So all those packages, earlier it was known as Java EE, now it has been renamed as Jakarta. So all those packages and everything are being moved from the Java X packages to the Jakarta packages. I will show you that as well. So if you are trying to migrate from Spring Boot 2 to Spring Boot 3, then those are the changes that you have to do. You have to change all those packages as well because the package structure is different now in Jakarta EE. And the base version of Spring Boot 3.0 is the Spring Framework 6. So we are going to upgrade the Spring Framework as well within the Spring Boot 3.0. So we are going to get all the new features of Spring Framework 6 as well. The next feature is the Spring Native. So as we already know that the industry is moving towards the cloud platforms and everything is moving towards the cloud, right? And most of the things are already in cloud. So what Spring Native will give us? Spring Native will give us the functionality to create a very lightweight executable files that can be containerized in the any form of containerization framework, and we can execute those runnables very easily. Those will be using very less memory and those will be very efficient as well. So Spring Native is something which is using GraalVM as a runtime library. So this is something that needs its own video. So I'll try to create a separate video for Spring Native. So which is something that we are not going to cover in this particular video, but this is the basic idea about the Spring Native, which will allow us to create the executable images that we can directly add in our containers, which is very lightweight. Okay, the next thing is the observability. Now what we mean by observability? So observability means that we are trying to find out how our system is running. We are trying to figure it out like how the system is running, and based on those outputs what we are getting from the system, we will try to figure it out like how our system is behaving, how we can do more efficient, how we can make our application more efficient, what are the changes that we have to do. All those things we can get from the observability. So with Spring Boot 3.0 we are using micrometer internally in Spring Boot, which will allow us to get a lot of details about how our application is running, and if we want we can export all those data to the different monitoring tools like Grafana and all. So these are the details that we are going to use, and we are going to check as well in detail like how we can use those observability in our application, how we can capture all those matrices and how we can publish those as well. So those are the part of observability. So that's what we are going to see here. The next is the problem details. So as we create our application, error handling is a critical part, right? So whenever we are creating the application, what are the different errors and how those errors to be represented are a very important thing. You might have seen that for the different applications there are different types of error management, right? Like how the error is particularly displayed for a particular client is something different. That is the difference between the application to application. In some of the applications you might be showing error code, status code, what is the message and everything. In others you might be adding extra details as well. So you can see generally these are the differences that you might see. But here with problem details, Spring Boot 3.0 is trying to give us a unique way, a common way to share all those error details to the client. So there is a problem details class introduced which will allow us to add all those details, wrap around all those details about error, and we can display those error details for the client. So which will make our application's error handling very easy. We just have to use the problem details and all the application will be using the same standards as well. So it is trying to make this standard very easy to be accepted throughout the industry. Okay, so that's how the problem details will help us to manage our exceptions. So we are going to see that as well. And the next one is the HTTP exchange. We live in the microservices world, right? And we try to communicate between different services through the REST clients or web clients or FAIN clients. What are the different clients that we use? And if you are aware about using the REST clients, what we do is we have to give the API details every time to get the REST client details, right? To call that particular API. So which is very time consuming as well. As we are moving towards a functional way of writing the code, declarative way of writing the code, HTTP exchange gives us the similar things. It allows us to call the different REST clients in the declarative approach. We just have to declare the interface, like which all APIs that I want to call, which are the different services that I have to onboard. All those details I'll define in my application and I can directly call those services by just using the interfaces that I have created. So with this, I do not have to call the API details every time to pass on the API details every time to fetch the data. I just define that one time in my configuration, and with the methods and interfaces, I can directly call those details. This is very similar to what you have seen in the FAIN client, where you will define a declarative approach, and with that you are going to call all those APIs. So similarly, we are going to use the HTTP exchange, that's default part of the Spring Framework 6, that will give us all those functionality. So these are the basic details that we are going to cover. Let's start with the Spring Boot 3 project using the Spring Initializer. So to create a project, what we will do is we'll go to the Spring Initializer. So we'll go to start.spring.io. And here you can see that this is the Spring Initializer where you are getting the support for Spring Boot 3. So current version is 3.0.4, which is the latest version. Okay, and you can see there are different snapshot versions and milestone versions also available. Okay, but we are going to use the 3.0.4 here. And you can see that the project default build tool is now Groovy. Okay, now if you want to change, you can change to Maven, and languages as well. You can select between Java, Kotlin and Groovy. We are going to select Java. And the similar details that we are going to give here, we are going to give the group name as daily code buffer. And the artifact demo that I'm going to give is Spring Boot 3 demo. Okay, and the description and all packaging, I'll keep it as jar, and you can see that by default it is using Java 17. Okay, so we are going to use the Java 17, and make sure that you have also installed Java 17 in your machine. So let's select the Java 17 and let's add the dependencies as well. So the dependencies that we are going to add here is Spring Web we are going to add. Okay, and then we are going to add reactive web, and we are also going to add the actuator dependency, because we are going to see the observability as well. So these are the dependencies that I'm adding, and let's generate the project and open in your favorite IDE. I'm going to use IntelliJ IDEA, but if you want, you can use any other IDEs as well. Okay, so let's generate the project. So the project is generated. Let me open IntelliJ IDEA. Okay, I'll open the project here. 3, and this is the project that I'm going to open. Okay, so here you can see that I've opened the project here, and the first thing that we are going to check is our Java 17 support, right? So if I go to module settings here, okay, here you can see that my Spring Boot 3 demo, it is using Java 17 here. Okay, and the SDK also you can see that it's going to use the Java 17. Okay, so now you can see that my application is running on Java 17. So now let's create a simple REST APIs within our Spring Boot 3 application that will allow us to do all those put, post, get and all those operations. Okay, so let's do that. So what we are going to do is we are going to come here in our Java application, and here let's create the different packages. So I'm going to create a package that is called model, where we will store all the data. Okay, we are going to create the controller. So let me just add the controller as well, and I'm going to add the service layer. So let me add the service layer, and I'm also going to add the error package as well to handle the exceptions. Okay, so these are the standard packages that I have created. Let me create a model here. So what I will do is I will use the Java 17 feature, that is a record, rather than creating a simple Java class. Okay, so what I'll do, I'll create a Java class here, and instead of class I'm going to select the record. Okay, and I'm going to create the record for a student. Okay, so we are going to work with the student here. So yeah, you can see that I've just simply created the record, and within this record I am trying to give some of the values. So suppose I'm trying to give string, let me just give ID, string name, and string email. Okay, so you can see that this is a simple student record that I've created, which will allow us to create a student with a constructor with these three fields, and it will add the getters as well for us. Okay, and this is going to be an immutable class, so once this is created it will be always unique. Cool. If you want to see about the records, I've already created a dedicated video, you can check that out as well. So my record is created, which will allow us to pass on the data. Now let's create the controller layer. So let's create the controller layer, and I'm going to create a class that says student controller here. Okay, and for this student controller I'm going to annotate with rest controller here to make it as a rest controller. Okay, and I'm going to add the request mapping here. Okay, and this is going to be my students. Okay, so I am just adding an API to my controller layer. Now I will add a service layer as well. So let me just create a service layer. I'll create a class, and I'm just going to create student service where I will just add the business logic. Okay, and as this is a service layer, I'm going to annotate with @service. Okay, so you can see that the service layer is created. Now I'm not directly using the database or anything. What I'll do, whatever data that I'm storing, I will store all those data in a particular list here. Okay, so what I'll do, I'll just create a list of student here equals to new array list. So let me just import the packages here, and that's it. Okay, so you can see that this is a simple student list that I have created, and whatever the data that I'm going to add, I will add everything here, and from this only I will get the data back. Okay, so this is my storage here. Cool. So you can see that this is just a simple thing that we were doing till now in our Spring Boot 2 as well. Okay, now let me show you one more thing, that suppose if you wanted to use any of the Java EE classes. Okay, suppose HTTP servlet. Okay, or HTTP session, you can see that now you can see that all those servlet classes and everything earlier they were part of JavaX. Now you can see that all those are moved in the Jakarta package. So this is the biggest change that we need to do when we are moving from Spring Boot 2 to Spring Boot 3 application. Whenever we are doing the migration, these are the changes that we have to do, all those packages and everything. Okay, that's the first thing, first step towards the migration process. So this way, this is one of the changes about the Jakarta, and the second one was regarding the Java 17 support. So for the Java 17 support, you can see that we have directly used the records here. Okay, now here let's create a simple methods to put the data, get the data, and all those stuffs. Okay, so I'll just create a method public student, okay, which will return the student, and the name of the method is add student. Okay, this is going to add a particular student, and this is going to be post mapping. Okay, and this is going to take the student object as the input parameter, and this student is going to be the request body. Okay, and now here to call the service layer, what we need is we need the object of the service as well. So let's give the object of service as well. So what I'll do, I will just add private student service, and I will just auto wire it. Okay, so I just got the student service as well, and I'll just call return student service dot add student, and I'm going to pass the student here. Okay, so now this particular method is not available, so I need to create that in the student service. So let me just create it, and the method is created, and what I will do here, I will just return student whatever it is. Okay, and before that what I will do is I will add student list. Okay, I will make it as a static here so that directly I can use dot add student, and I'm going to add the student here. You can see that simple thing, I've just added the student and I have written the student from here. Cool. I'll go to the controller back again, and you can see that the method is created. Okay, let me again create one more method to get all the students. Okay, so I'll just create a method where public, I'll get a list of student back from get all students. Okay, and this is going to be my get mapping. Okay, and I'm going to return by mistake I've added the capital S. We should not be having the static methods. Okay, that's why. Okay, so return student service dot get all students. Okay, this is a simple method that I'm going to create here, which is going to return all the students here. So let me just create a method. Okay, and from here I'm going to return student list. Okay, simple thing. So you can see that two methods are created where I will add the student and I will get all the students back as well. Let me create one more method to get a particular student as well. So what I will do, I will just create a method where I'll just get public student because I just want a single student, and get student is the method. Okay, and this is going to be the get mapping, and what I will do here is I will try to get a particular ID as well, like for which particular ID I want the data, and create a path variable. Okay, string ID. So this is a simple thing. Now for the return, what I'll do, return student service dot get student based on the ID that we provide. Okay, so this ID we need to match with the list that we have available to get the data. So let me just create this method, and with the ID I need to loop through this list, and then I need to return the data back. So what I'll do, I will simply return student list dot filter. Okay, let me just, and what I'm going to filter here, I'm going to filter student, and that student dot ID should be equals to the ID that we passed. Okay, dot find first dot or else throw exception. The exception that I'm trying to throw is runtime exception. Simple. And I'll just pass on student is not available, and I'm going to create new. So you can see that this is a simple stream that I've done here, that I'm filtering the data and finding the first record and passing it, and if it's not available I'm throwing the runtime exception. And if I go to the controller, you can see that my method is also created. Okay, cool. You can see that everything is cool, and we can just start our application to see if everything is running or not. Okay, so let's start the application here, and you can see that the application is started. Okay, so if I go to the Postman here, let me just go to the Postman, and what I'll do, I'll go to the new API here, and I'm going to do the post here, and the URL is http localhost 8080 because that's the default port, and I'm going to use the students. Okay, because that's the API that we have created, students. Okay, and what we are going to do, we are going to get the student here. Okay, so within the student, if I go to the body, I need to pass on the raw JSON data, and the first one is ID, the second one is name, and the third one is email. So these are the three details that we need: ID, name, and email. So let's pass on the details. I am going to pass ID as 1, name as Shabir, and email ID as shabir@gmail.com. Okay, and I'm going to hit on send, and here you can see that we got 200 requests here, and we got the data back as well. Okay, so let me pass on any other details to Nikhil and nikhil@gmail.com. Okay, so you can see that 2 records that I have created. Now if I just change to get, I should be able to get all the records. You can see that we got 1 record, we got 2 record, and if I try to get a particular record, that also I should be able to get. You can see that I'm getting 2 over here. But if I try to get any other record which is not available, I should be getting the error here. You can see that we got the error with this all the details, that is finded internal server error. Okay, cool. Our application is running completely fine. So till now we saw the few features of the Spring Boot 3. Now let's see about the problem detail feature. Okay, so currently you can see that the error that we are getting is something about this format, where we are showing timestamp, status, error, and path, which is the default that we are getting. But now what we will do is we will standardize everything. We are going to use problem details class, which will allow us to standardize all those error handling throughout our application, and if we have multiple, we can also do the same thing. Okay, so let's do that. First of all, what we have to do is we have to wrap around our controllers with a controller advice, so that whenever there is an exception, we can use that to capture those exceptions, and we can convert our objects to this response body. Okay, so let's do that. We will go to our application, and we have to handle errors. Generally what we do is we would have created a Java class with error message, right? This is the standard format that we would have done, right? We would have created the class, and we could have added all the details like private string status, private string error code, and private string error message, right? So this is a standard way that we were doing till now, right? But now we are going to use the problem details rather than using the class that we are going to create. So first of all, to handle the errors, we have to create a controller advice. So let's create a controller advice first. So let me create a class here and I'm going to name it as a custom exception handler. Now what I will do is I will annotate with REST controller advice to make it as a advice for our all the controllers that we are going to create. Now we need to have a method to handle this exception. Currently we have added the runtime exception. So that is something that we need to handle now. So generally what we do is public error message that we pass, right? And on runtime exception we do this, okay? And we create the object of error message, and that is something that we return. And here we need to add the exception handler, and this exception handler is for runtime exception, okay? And this is going to take runtime exception as the input. Cool. Now what we generally do is we take the exception class and we fill all the details in the error message, and that is something that we return. But rather than that, what we'll do is we will use problem details now. Okay, so you can see that this problem detail has been recently added in the Spring framework. Okay, you can see it's part of the Spring Web 6 now. And if you go to this problem details, you can see that we are getting a lot of details here. That is the type of the URI, the title, status, details, instance, properties, and many things. Okay, so with this we can set all those details, and this is something that will be standard throughout the different applications because this is part of Spring and we can directly use it. We do not have to create any different classes. So let's use this rather than our custom error message. So this is something that I have defined here, that is problem details, and this is something that I'm going to return. So I'm going to return problem details. Detail equals to problem details dot for status and details. So here I need to pass status and details. So status I'm going to pass HTTP status code dot 400 dot bad request. Okay, and I'm going to pass at ex dot get message. Okay, so you can see that I have just created the problem detail object, and now if you want to set any details, other details as well, so you can go to details dot and you can set the all the other things like details, properties, titles, and everything. Okay, these all things that also you can set if you want. Okay, I don't want to add, I just wanted to show you how what we can do here. So this is something that I've defined, and I can return details object from here. Okay, so you can see that that's a simple thing that I've done here, where I've handled the exceptions using the controller advice, and I am using the problem details. So let me restart our application and let's see this in action. So here you can see that our application has started. Now let's go to the Postman, and if I just change it to post here, and I'll just remove 3 here, and if I save the data, you can see this is post, and here you can see that I have saved the data. Okay, now if I go to get details and if I just give 2, I should be able to get the details. But if I pass 3, it should raise the runtime exception, and you can see that I am able to get the details here, which is different. Now you can see that I'm getting the type, as we have not defined any type, we are getting blank, but we got the title as bad request, we got the status as 400 because we defined the status as 400, right? And the details, you can see that we have provided student is not available, and in the instance you can see that we will get the URL for which particular URL this field. Okay, so you can see that now this is very standard, right? So this is something that we can define for all our applications that we are using whenever we are upgrading from Spring Boot 2 to Spring Boot 3. Okay, so this is how we can use the problem details to make our application exception handling standardized. Now let's talk about the observability. Okay, like currently you can see that we are trying to do all those details, right? We created few of the APIs, and for all those APIs you can see that for some of the places we are getting exceptions, for some of the places we are getting the correct responses. So all those details you can see that I want to capture using the observability. I want to get all those matrices and I want to capture those, and I want to publish those to any of the monitoring tools to monitor my application, like what is happening here, right? So that's a standard thing that we do in our production grade applications, that's monitoring about the application. So let's see how easy it is to implement the observability using Spring Boot 3.0. Internally, it's going to use the micrometer here. So with the help of actuator and Spring Boot 3.0, all those details, we will be able to do it very easily. Let's go back to our IntelliJ IDEA and let's implement the observability. We are going to see about the basics, how it works, and there are other ways to implement as well, like if you want to change the code, if you want to make the code to be reused, right? To make your code reusable for all the different APIs that you create, that also we can do. But here simply we are going to understand what actually it allows us. Okay, so simply what I want is whatever is happening in my service layer, like what all the business logics and everything, all the requests and everything is coming here, right? So here I want to monitor everything. I want to get all my observability, okay, all the matrices. So for all those, for storing everything, what I need is I need a registry. So what I need an observation registry. Okay, so for that what I need the object of that. So I will just create the object of that, like private observation registry. You can see that this is part of the micrometer. Okay, so I'm just going to use this observation registry and I'm going to auto wire it. That's the first thing. Okay, simple. So now I will be able to use this observation registry and I'm going to get all the details from here. Now as I've created the observation registry, whatever the observation that I'm going to create, that will be part of this registry to get me all the details, and all those details I can see in my actuator. So whenever I'm going to expose my actuator endpoints, in that I am going to see all these details. So first of all, what I'll do, here is the details, right? So whenever I am adding the student and I'm returning the data back, alongside I want to get my matrices also. Okay, at this point. So what I will do is, rather than just returning the student, I will wrap around this in my observation. Okay, so rather than just return statement here, what I will do, I will just return observation dot create not started, and here I need to give the name of the observation. Okay, so here what I'll do, I will give the name as add student, because I'm doing add student, and whenever I want to get the matrices of add student, what is happening around the add student, I can get all those details using this add student, whatever I have mentioned here. Okay, so that's why I'm giving the name add student, and all these details will be where? In my observation registry. So that is something that I need to add as a observation as registry. And what I need to observe, okay, which is taking the supplier. So here this, as it is taking the supplier, what I will do, I need to observe the student that I am returning back. Okay, so here you can see that I wrapped around my return statement within this observation, and this observation is going to store all my data in my observation registry and with the name of add student. So whatever is happening around the add student, I can get all those details within this add student here. Okay, now similarly I can do this for get as well. Okay, so here also I can do all these things. Rather than this, I need to do student list, but rather than add a student, I can say this is get students. Okay, similarly I can do the same thing for my this thing as well. Okay, what I'm going to do is, I just did this, I'm just going to do get students here, and rather than this return, I'm going to copy all this. Let me just comment it out, and I'm going to observe this entire method here. Okay, now you can see that this doesn't look that much neater, but we can extract out all these details into a different method and we can call those methods here. So that way it will be much cleaner as well. But this is what you can do. This is just a supplier. Okay, so now this supplier, it will try to do all those information. It will try to monitor each and everything over here. So now you can see that I have added the observation as well, but now I need to enable my actuator as well. By default actuator, all the endpoints are not enabled, right? So we need to enable all the endpoints. So what I will do is, I will go to the resources, I'll go to the application.properties and web exposure included, right? That is management.endpoints.web.exposure.included. I'll keep it as a star, so it will add everything. And I'll just add show health details as always. Okay, so you can see that I'm just enabling all the endpoints, but when you are working with the production grade application, you have to define which all endpoints that you are enabling. Cool, so that's it. Currently, if you have seen my logs here, you can see that within the actuator, okay, only one endpoint was exposed. Okay, now we will restart our application, so more endpoints should be exposed here. So let's restart here. So here my application is restarted, and here you can see that there are 13 endpoints exposed within the actuator. So now we should be able to get more details from the micrometer. So to check this, what we will do is we will go to the browser here, and what we will do is we will go to our local host and we will go to our actuator. Okay, so here you can see that we are getting the actuator details, and you can see we are getting all the details about our application. Okay, but here within this matrices, right, matrix, we should be able to get more details. So currently you can see that within this matrix there are a lot of details available, right? But here you can see that within our matrix we are not able to see what we have added here. So if I go here, and you can see what we have added in the service, that is get student and get students and add students. All these details we are not getting, because this will be only added once there are any calls. Currently there is no call, so that's why it is not showing here. So but if we go to our postman, and if we are trying to get post, okay, and we are trying to add data here, you can see that we call it one time, and again I'm changing the value Shabir send. Okay, you can see that couple of times I call this post. If I go to get, you can see I call it once, twice, thrice, and if I call it /1 /2 and /3, so we should be getting this error. Okay, so you can see that now there is a mix of responses that we are getting, right? Now if I go here and if I refresh this, okay, here you can see that now I'm getting add student dot active, I'm getting get student dot active, and I'm getting get students and get students dot active. Okay, so now you can see that I'm getting more details here. Okay, so if I try to get add student here, okay, so this is something that we need to check, add student. Now if I check here as add student, you can see that I'm getting more data. You can see that statistics, we had hit it twice, right? So that's why you can see that we are getting 2. Total time it took to complete, maximum time it took to complete the request, and was there any errors available or not. So you can see that now we are getting a complete matrices of our APIs that we have created, like what is happening within our API. Now if I just get active here, it will try to give me any active task happening on that particular API. Okay, so that information also we are getting. Now if I try to do get student, okay, so here you can see that we got get student here, and we hit thrice. This is the total time, this is the maximum time, and within the errors you can see that we got once runtime exception, right? So this is also captured here. Isn't it cool? So you can see that there is a lot of details that we are getting here about a matrices. So you can see that with just a simple code we were able to add a complete matrices for our different APIs. So that is the power of Spring Boot 3 with Spring Framework 6 and the micrometer. So these are the new changes been added, and it's very easy to implement the matrices for our applications. Now let's check about the HTTP exchange as well. So earlier we were seeing that we were using REST clients, web clients, and we were also using the FAIN clients to define our REST API calls for communicating between the different services that we have in our microservices world. But within the Spring Framework 6 and Spring Boot 3, we have the HTTP exchange by default, which will allow us to define our REST API calls for the different services using the declarative approach. We will just define our interfaces, and that interface will define that we need to call this API at this place, and with just a method calls we will be able to get those data. We do not have to worry about getting the REST API calls, defining the API parameters and all those details every time. We just declare that we just want to call this, and we will be able to call it easily. Okay, so to understand that, what we are going to do is we are going to create a client for the student service. Suppose this is a student service and there is a client, and this client will be using the HTTP exchange to call a student service and to get all the data from it. Okay, that's how generally it will work. So let's do that. I will go back to the browser, I'll go to the Spring Initializer again, and I'll create one more project. So what I'll do, the language is Java, Spring Boot version is again 3.0.4, group name is okay, and here rather than Spring Boot 3 demo, what I'll do is I'll just change to student client. Okay, because this is a student client and it is trying to get the data from the student service. And packaging is jar, Java version is 17, and I don't need the actuator now, and all these details I need. Okay, so what I'll do, I'll just generate the project and I will open an IntelliJ IDEA. So within this main, I'll go here and I will add a project, and I'm going to add a Spring student client here. So you can see the project is added here. I'll just enable the use services so I can use all those applications as service here. Okay, so here you can see that student client is created here. So what I'll do is within this, what I need a model here. Okay, so let me just create a model, and I just need a package that is service. Okay, so for model, what I'll do is I'll go to the student model here, because this is something that I need. Ideally, what you can do is whenever there's this type of situation where you have to reuse, you can create a common service to use all those details. Okay, so currently you can see that I just created a record and I can use it directly. And within this service, what I can do is I can create a new Java class, and I can define student client service. Okay, I'm just defining as a client, and I am going to define this as an interface. Okay, so here you can see that I just defined an interface. Let me just rename it. Okay, student client service. Now, rather than defining this as a service, what I'll do, I'll define this as a HTTP exchange. Okay, so you can see that this is part of a Spring Framework web. Okay, so I just define this as a HTTP exchange. Now I need to define like what API that I need to call. So if I go to the student controller, okay, my Spring Boot 3 demo application, this is something that I have defined, that this is that I am trying to expose everything within the /students API, and this is something that I want to call from my student client service, right? So I'm going to define here that this is going to be the students. Okay, and here what I want, I need a get method, add method, and everything. So I just define, I just need a list of student, okay, as a get all students. That's it. Okay, I just declared a method, and what I will do is I will declare a method as a get exchange, because from this HTTP exchange I need a get method, because if I go here, this is a get API, right? If I go to student controller, this is a get method. If I want a post method, what I can do is I can define a @post exchange, right? And if I want to define delete, I can define delete exchange, delete method, delete exchange. So similarly, what we were defining as get mapping, post mapping, and all those, we have to define as an exchange now. Okay, because we are trying to do the exchange. So this way we have to define. Okay, so here you can see that I have defined one API, that is get all students, which we will get from the students as a get exchange here. That's it, we just declared it. Okay, now what I have to do is I have to have a controller, which controller will call this a different service to get my all the details. So let me just create a controller here to get me the data. Okay, so within this controller, what I'll do, I'll just define a class that is student client controller. Okay, and I'll just define this as a REST controller, and I'll just do request mapping as well, and this request mapping I'll just define as /client/students. Now what I want to do is I need to get a method that is a list of student and get all students. Okay, this is a simple method from which I want to get all the data, and this is going to be my again get mapping, right? Because this is my REST controller. Now here what I need, I want to call the REST API endpoint of my Spring Boot 3. This is where I've defined, right? My student service. So I want to get all the data from the student service. I want to do then HTTP call to get all the data and get the data back. Okay, so for that, previous approach was to define a REST client, and with that REST client I need to define the APIs and get all the details. But here, as I have already defined the client here as a client service, I need to use this. And as this is the interface, right, I can go here, I can define private student service, and I just need to auto wire it. Okay, and here you can see that I'm getting the error because I cannot auto wire a interface. I need to have the implementation of it, right? I need to have a class that can create the student client service object for me to get all the details, which is not there yet. So we need to do define that as well, right? So for here we need to add the configuration, like we can use the web client here. So for that web client I need to have the configuration, like for my web client, whenever I need the student client service, it should inject that object for me, and it should define the URL where I need to hit, and I need to get the details. Okay, so that's the only one time configuration that you need to do for the entire service. Rest, for every time you just go to your student client service and get all the details. You define all those APIs there directly and get all everything. Cool, right? So what we will do is we will define a configuration. So let me just define a package here as a config. Okay, and what I will do, I will create a Java class and I'll say web client config. Okay, and as this is a configuration, I will define this as a configuration class, configuration annotation, sorry. Okay, first thing, I need the object of a web client. So what I will do is I will just define public web client. Okay, and I'll just define this is a student service web client, because you can define multiple web clients as well, right? If you are communicating with 10 services, all those 10 web clients you can define. So with this name I just need student service web client. Okay, and this is going to return web client.builder.build and dot, I can define base URL here. So what is the base URL? HTTP localhost colon 8080. Okay, this is my base URL. So whenever I want the web client of a student's web service call, this is the base URL, and after that whatever that we have defined, that we are going to get. And this is something that I'm going to create as a bean. Now you just created a web client, but now there has to be a configuration where whenever I want a student's client service, it should inject within the web client and I should get it, right? So for that, what I will do, I'll create the another method where I'll define public student client service. Okay, now what I need to have the proxy service implementation for my web client, right? So I just need to have the HTTP proxy factory. Okay, this is HTTP service proxy factory. Now this is something which will allow us to bind these two things, my client with the web client. Okay, equals to HTTP service factory, that is HTTP service proxy factory dot builder dot build. Okay, so this is the builder method that I'm using here, and within this builder method, let me just move it down here, and within this builder I need to add this web client in my factory. Okay, so here that is web client adapter dot for client. What is the client? Web client. This is the web client, that is student service web client. Okay, so now you can see that within my factory I have one web client, that is student service web client. Okay, so you can see that within my factory I have added that. Now I can get that from the factory and I can return back. So here I can return HTTP service factory dot create client, and we need to create client for what? We need to give the class name. So class name is student client service dot class. Okay, and now for this I can add as a bean. So now we have a bean for the student client service now. Okay, so we have a bean. So for that bean we can inject this bean for my interface we have already created. So if I go to the student client controller, you can see that now error is gone, because now we are able to inject that. Now from here I can directly call return student client service dot get all students. Right, now this get all students will go here, it will do the get API call where into /students. Okay, so now everything should work. Now for this resources I'll just do one thing. My current application is running on 8080, and this should also will work on 8080, but I need to change it. Two applications cannot work on same port, right? So I'll just define as 8081. So now what I'll do, I'll go to the services here and I'll start this as well as a student client application. So now you can see that this is also started. Okay, and if I go to my browser and if I just do 8080/students, you can see that I'm getting 2 records here, right? Because these are the 2 records that I've already added. Now what I'll do is I will do localhost 8081 slash client slash students. Okay, because this is my other application. This application should go to this localhost 8080 slash students, and it should give me all these details. Okay, and if I run this, you can see that I'm getting all these details back. Cool, right? If I add one more record here, okay, suppose I'm adding 3 now, and I'm adding shivam at gmail.com. This is going to be post request send. Now you can see that I've added 3rd record as well, and if I go back here and if I hit again, you can see that I'm getting 3 records now, right? And if I go to port 8080 other application, there also I should get the 3 records. So you can see that I was easily able to create a declarative client using the HTTP exchange, and I'm able to get all the details. Now if you want to add the same thing for the post, you can do for the post, you can do for the delete and everything. And if you have to add any other client, that also you can add. You can define any other client, you can create the interface, and you go to the configuration, you define another web client that is going to call the other service, and you can add the method as a bean to get you that particular detail. And you can also do one thing, that this all API that I have defined here, you can extract all this out in a properties file, and from there you can inject those things. So these are the things, minor details that you can do, but this is how you will be able to create the HTTP exchange as well for your Spring Boot applications. So now you can see that it is trying to remove as much as dependency for the other libraries and baking everything within the Spring framework itself. So it is very easy for the developers to start working and building the production grade applications. Now these are all the major features that we have talked about for the Spring Boot 3 and Spring Framework 6. If you have any doubts regarding any of the things that we have covered, then do let me know in the comment section below. I will try to help you as soon as possible. I will also try to convert all my existing videos regarding Spring Security and OAuth and Spring Framework and Spring Boot complete tutorials to Spring Boot 3, so you can get all those latest details as well. Okay, so in the coming days I'll be trying to get all those videos ready for you guys. So that's all in this video. If you like this video, then give us a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for the upcoming videos. You can also click on the join button to support my channel as well. I will see you in the next video. Till then, happy coding. Bye bye.